Welcome to Eviliv3, the live media commentary show that answers the question, are progressives liberals? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we are reviewing Justice is Coming, how progressives are going to take over the country and America is going to love it. Now, this is published by Cenk Uygur, founder of and host of the Young Turks, well, one of the many hosts. I've been watching that network on YouTube for a very long time, literally years upon years. And while I've never fully agreed with everything said by any of the hosts on it, I have always seen myself as a progressive. And a lot of people continually ask, well, what does that mean? Because as it seems like nowadays, like language doesn't actually have definition anymore. People can just throw around terms and it'll mean anything you want. And a perfect example of that is woke. It has a definition, but everyone who uses it doesn't seem to understand what that definition actually is. And so when I found out that he had a book, I'm one of those people where I subscribed to Adbusters back in college, and I, got their recommended book lists and a lot of, I'm a reader. And so I love reading books about, this sounds so stupid and on the nose, but of course, I love reading books about stuff I'm interested in, but also ideas that challenge my own. Because I don't fully agree with everything that's ever said on the network of the Young Turks, am I going to feel the same way about this, what arguably can be seen as a progressive manifesto? And it's not a manifesto in the terms of, here is what you need to do today, tomorrow, and the next day, though it does have suggestions for how to get involved near the very end of the book. It's really more of like an essay, a book-sized essay about how USA is actually a progressive nation and has always been a progressive nation. And how in really arguably the Nixon era, but the stages were set before the Nixon era, how America turned from being a progressive nation into the whatever the hell it is now. Because Democrats aren't progressives anymore. They used to be, and they used to be incredibly powerful. Of course, conservatives, of course, aren't progressives. That's the opposite of progressives. But it also presents this idea of democracy through the lens of the progressive movement or progressive ideology, and how that is not this fundamental, shocking way of looking at reality. That it's actually incredibly popular amongst all demographics and all socio-political, even religious individuals. The ideas that are inherent to the progressive movements actually benefits literally everyone, even the people who seem to be adamantly against them. So why would anyone vote against their self-interest, you might ask? Welcome to reality. Because they're lied to all the time. That's why I've never understood why anyone can consider themselves a diehard Republican and always vote with the Republican Party, especially when Trump came into office. You may like Trump for whatever reason you may like him, but he's a horrible human being, a terrible businessman, and a pathetic politician. And there's literally no arguing that. He's even an admitted criminal, and he's in the courts trying to defend himself, losing lawyers left and right because he is a criminal. So I've never understood the idea of Republicans, like regular, average, everyday people, being Republican when the entire party does nothing but bring down the average, everyday people. And when you start looking at what progressives actually are, and is brilliantly laid out in this book, arguably the first time that the progressives, like the progressive movement, has ever been given a definition, I would think, but possibly it's been there before, and I'm just ignorant to it. I'm totally open to being wrong about a lot of things. But what's really interesting is that, well, then that means that Democrats are progressives, right? Wrong. Democrats are as corporatists as Republicans are. And what it does such a wonderful job in this book doing is explaining at what point in history Democrats stopped being progressive And before that, they were winning and kicking ass and politically dominating Republicans. Then corporations got involved, money got involved. It took over our Supreme Court. And from that point on, the Democratic Party thought, well, the only way that we can compete with Republicans, because now they're backed by big corporations and they have the Supreme Court on their side, is to also take these big corporate money buyouts. And so they get all these donations from big corporations, and then they're expected to, of course, do what the corporations want them to do legislatively. And that leads to Democrats turning into Republican light. And that's why we've seen Democrats struggle constantly when the actual individuals voting for them, at sometimes Republicans, a lot of independents, almost entirely, and then, of course, the Democratic majority is going to, of course, vote for the Democrat, no matter who the hell it is on the ballot. And that's the biggest problem, I think, personally, and why we ended up with fucking Biden, which is a goddamn nightmare. So, the progressive movement is broken down in... Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mention. So this was actually recently released. This was printed by St. Martin's Press, released September 19, 2023. So this is very new. So it defines the progressive movement as an expansion of the circle of liberty to include literally everyone, not to exclude certain minorities or certain people in the majority or white people or Republicans or anything. It's to include everyone, as the Constitution says it is supposed to. But as we've seen through the Southern strategy, through Republicans, they've done everything they can to exclude people, because if they included everyone, as they admit themselves, even Donald Trump admitted it, Republicans would never be voted in office again. And so they have to make sure that the majority of people who can vote don't vote, or have such difficulty trying to vote that they then don't vote. It's a constant struggle that is active and real. So expansion of the circle of liberty is the first step. There's only 3 of them. The second is equality of opportunity. Now, this is a huge, important point here for me personally, because I don't believe, and I don't think anyone logically believes, in equality for all, because everyone is not equal. And I'm not just talking about how socially or politically some people are subjugated. I'm talking about the literal aspect of this. Not everyone is a Beethoven. Not everyone is a Leonardo da Vinci. Not everyone is a Martin Luther King. Everyone has different abilities innate unto themselves, different capacities for different aspects of life and creation, and we all do the best we can with what we have. Now, a lot of this is going to come down to genetics. It's going to come down to the regions that you're born, the societies you're born into, the cultures that you're raised up in, and that can push your innate abilities a little bit, so you can become better than you would naturally be through practice traditionally. But everyone has an upper limit. So knowing that literally everyone is not equal, the promise of America is the opportunity, equal opportunity under the law. And so to push that out, of course, in our modern era, you look at the injustices in the policing systems, you look at the injustices and inequality in our legal systems, and it goes all the way down to even housing. It's just not equal. And so along with expanding the circle of liberty, it's expanding the opportunity of equality. So everyone has the same basic starting points in the society, and what they make of those starting points is incumbent upon them. That's not to say that, affirmative action or anything where they put people in certain positions simply because they're a minority. No, it's simply to say that everyone gets an equal starting point. How could you not agree with that? Unless, of course, you're, some wealthy person that's been given tons of money like Donald Trump. Okay. Literally the only reason why I'm bringing him up in this entire review is because he's the greatest demagogue of our time and an abject criminal and possibly the next president. And so it's relevant. And the next one is justice for all. And yes, All of this is just a reiteration of what's already in the Constitution, but it wouldn't have to be reiterated. There's like a fly buzzing around in this office. It wouldn't have to be reiterated. Sorry, that was a weird little squirrel moment. If there was justice for all. The fact is if you're wealthy, you probably won't ever see jail time. And you see that a lot in our society. There's tons of cases, a couple of them are actually pointed out in this book, where a boy rapes a girl in college, a college-age boy. He's wealthy. The lawyer defending him literally said he suffered from privilege. Like, he made up some bullshit word for it. But it's literally, he is such a privileged human, he didn't realize that he was doing something wrong. Really. And it worked. It actually got him off. Unbelievable. But that is the reality of our justice system. So everyone does not have the same amount of justice. It should be justice for all in this country. And that's those three progressive points, which actually define what it means in totality to be a progressive. And each of these poll enormously well over 50%, and even more. When you break down the sort of this is driving me crazy. I'm gonna have to kill this damn fly. This is too much. When you break down the legislation that's proposed without putting any labels on it and just saying, should we have health care for everyone in the country, it polls incredibly high, like 80%. Should everyone be on the same level legislatively, legally? Should everyone suffer the same consequences for their own actions? Well, yeah, of course. Everyone should suffer the same consequence for their own actions. Should we have paid family leave when you have a baby? Yeah, the majority of Americans want that. I mean, the reality is all of the progressive movement talking points, the majority of America actually wants. But as soon as you tack on progressive or Democrat to it, then the lines get drawn and the tribalistic nature of humanity comes into play. That's a problem. That is something that we've been dealing with since the dawn of time. It's our lizard brain. It's the way we've survived, but we don't have to act that way anymore. And the promise of America is that we don't need to divide amongst ourselves. We are all supposed to be equal under the eyes of the law. And that's it. And so, the presentation of this is that it's progressives versus conservatives, not Democrats versus Republicans. And it's important to note that because, again, most Republicans and most Democrats are corporatists. They're bought and paid for by their corporate donors. And so one of the huge points of being a progressive is to get money out of politics so that the politicians, instead of listening to their corporate donors, listen to us who voted them into office. That's it. When we have an active system where the person with the most money is the most likely to get into office, not the people with the most votes, we have a system like we do now, completely fundamentally broken. Because once those politicians get into office, they're not working for us, they're working for their corporate donors who gave them all the money, who put them in the chair. I mean, it's logical, but for some reason, no one seems to want to admit it or say it, except for the Young Turks. And so I thought that was a really great message throughout the course of this entire thing. And it really framed, I think, wildly effectively, regardless of where you stand politically, if you read this, you will come across with a new perspective. One of the things that really kind of woke me up, other than this fly that is driving me nuts, is... I know someone's going to watch this and be like, see, it's a demon. Because every time there's like a debate and there's like a fly buzzing around, some insane right-winger is just like, demon, flies, Beelzebub, because they're fucking reductive and stupid. No, it's just a fly flew in through the window. That's it. The media itself straight up lies to us because they don't actually present unbiased opinions, and they don't allow progressives on the air because the media is controlled by corporations. Everything from CNBC and MSNBC, Fox News, of course, every single media outlet that's not paid for by the viewers. Like another really great online news show that I watch is Breaking Points. I think Young Turks and Breaking Points are the two best news places online. Young Turks because it's progressive perspective, and Breaking Points because it gives both a progressive and a conservative perspective. I like having my ideas challenged. I don't like living in a vacuum. And so I really highly recommend those two channels. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, if we're working on progressives versus conservatives, then and not trying to diametrically frame it as Democrat versus Republican, because again, they're both corporatists, then we can sort of reshape the conversation of what politics means. Instead of voting for an R or a D, you're voting for a P or a C, meaning someone that's actually going to support you or someone who's going to support corporations. And again, I think personally it's very important to have my representative represent my best interest, not the corporation who put them in office. This is a great book. You really need to pick this up if you're an adult or even a young man or woman who is mildly interested in politics. Not only is it going to educate and inform you about the history of our current system and how we got to where we are, but it's also going to share ideas about how we can improve and how the future, while right now, if you just paid attention to the corporate media, it would seem very sad and lonely and almost, completely depressing. like we're going to end up in some sort of weird apocalypse. But if you actually look at the polling and you look at the individuals that are coming up in the new generations, way younger than me, I'm Gen X, Generation Z and M and Y and stuff, they actually are innately progressive. And so the sea change is coming no matter what. And it's funny because you see some progressives who are already in the system, in the Senate, like AOC, for example, or Ilhan Omar or Rashid Tlaib and stuff. You see them really doing some great things, but there's so few of them. Well, in the future, that's not going to be the case. And it's why you see people like Nancy Pelosi clinging to power, this corporate Democrat who is controlled by corporations, just doing her best to stay on as long as possible. And they rolled out every damn Democrat that has recently died, and Republican. Of course, Mitch McConnell's, on the last, I don't know what, turtle shell? This fucking guy. They rolled them out as long as they possibly can, even when they're clearly demented, like Joe Biden, and they clearly have health issues, and they're not there mentally, so that they can try to maintain control as long as possible, because they too see that the progressive movement is returning. It's not coming to politics because it's been here before. It's coming back, and it's coming back because the people who are coming up this generation, the next generation, and the next generation are polling out as purely progressive by massive majorities. So the future does actually look bright. And this book actually is a wonderful way of being shown that and walked through it, not just told it from a TV pundit, not being spoon-fed it in a way that makes you feel stupid or you feel like you have to be on some sort of team. No, it gives you straight out examples, polling, cites every source cited, so you can look it up yourself to make sure that he's not lying. I think this is a brilliant book that does a great job of not only defining the progressive movement, but also educating people who may instinctively, because of tribalism, be against it, and present it so that they realize they're not against it, and they actually are in favor of it. Because it's not to get rid of people, it's to include people. It's not exclusive, it's inclusive. And it's a return to form from when America was its greatest. Ironically, that whole Make America Great Again, the time they're referring to is when progressives were in charge. So I'm hoping that we get back to that. This is a great book. because of it, I give it 5 out of 5 evil eyes. I'm telling you, this is worth reading. It gets a little bit long in the tooth in some parts, and it sounds a little self-serving in some aspects, but that's only because Cenk Uygur has been involved in this movement from the beginning for so many years. He built an empire with TYT, and it's all funded by viewers, people who actually progressives who care. And that's something to tip your cap to. So if you're interested in politics, even if you disagree with what progressives are or the political movement, you should at least educate yourself on what it is, so when you're railing against it, you don't look like a fucking idiot. So buy the book, read it, check it out. You won't be disappointed. All right. Thank you all so much for tuning in on this review. As always, like it or not, evil spelled backwards is live. So get your asses out there and be evil.